So on Ukraine, a year plus ago, your advice, the president's advice, was Ukraine had no cards to play. They should go cut the best possible deal they could. Clearly that was wrong. What did you miss? What did you miss about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine that you didn't see that Ukraine was going to be capable of doing what they've done in the last 14 months?
What we didn't miss, and we're here in this committee, is that Joe Biden, with no accountability, gave hundreds of billions of dollars of our weapons to Ukraine, to an outcome that never would have happened if President Trump was president. So he pulled out you guys don't talk about that. Ultimately, President Trump believes there should be a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine.
But you didn't expect Ukraine to be where they're at right now. I'm asking you, just from a strategic standpoint, what
I think the Ukrainians have shown great courage, and I appreciate that Europe is now paying for any weapons that we provide.
Welcome back to Way Too Early, just past 5:30 here on the East Coast, 2:30 out west. I'm Ali Vitale. I'm laughing at that Adam Smith, okay, sardonic reply, because that was more from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth yesterday. We got to point out, he misrepresented there the amount of munitions the Biden administration provided Ukraine. It was actually about $34 billion in weapons from DoD stockpiles to support our ally. Hegseth also told lawmakers that $400 million in congressionally approved Ukraine aid that was signed into law in February was finally released on Tuesday. So that at least briefly solves that previously held mystery. I want to bring in here on set with us congressional reporter for Axios, Kate Santelise. You have had a lot to be tracking lately. I've been dizzy over it. Let's start on Hegseth, though, because I think it's notable that it's the first time that he's on the Hill taking questions since the start of the Iran war. He's going to the Senate today, but it was testy there for him yesterday. And he was hit from some Republicans on concerns of munitions stockpiles, concerns over shipbuilding. And I think there's this looming concern among Republicans of what happens if the Iran war continues to stretch and the administration's still not coming to us to approve anything?
Right. That's exactly right. We've started to notice some growing uneasiness with Republicans about this war. We're around the 60-day mark now, which a lot of them have pointed to as sort of a turning point in how they're feeling about this and whether or not Congress is going to need to take a firmer role here. We know that Democrats are planning to introduce more war powers resolutions. So far, we haven't really seen the numbers shift there in the House or the Senate, just a handful of Republicans each time. But now that we're a little bit further into this and a lot of Republicans feel like they still don't have the answers that they need about this, we could see a few of them shift and start to support that. And then once we get the supplemental funding request from the Pentagon, too, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with that, whether that's in reconciliation or not, whether they're going to have offsets for that. Cutting domestic programs to pay for an overseas war, that's not a great campaign message going into 2026.
No, certainly not, especially as the largest concern that voters continue to say they have is around the cost of living. And the Iran war has only sent oil prices spiking. So they're seeing it every day at the pump. We're going to come to reconciliation in just a moment because there was an incremental amount of progress on that yesterday. But staying on Hegseth, I think keeping on affordability as well, there was no price tag that was put out by Hegseth. Russ Vought declined to give one when he was up on the Hill. It's budget season. All we're talking about in theory is what does everything cost? And that's still missing.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's a number that Republicans have been wanting for several weeks now. It's not exactly clear when we're going to see that from the Pentagon, when we're going to get clear answers. There's obviously fiscal hawks that are concerned about a really high price tag, $400 million, $1 billion, something like that. Those numbers are concerning for them. Yeah. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the Pentagon sends over.
Concerning for them, especially given the fact that whatever the price tag is, Congress is going to be seen as footing the bill for a war that they actually had no say in getting into in the first place. I'm personally interested to see if the pretty quiet consternation that we've heard from some Republicans on Iran actually manifests in them doing anything about it now that we are on the 60-day mark and they have laid that out as a metric. Right. You know, the other thing that we were tracking closely yesterday was just the sheer drama out of the House Republican conference, because the infighting really was on full display yesterday as House Speaker Mike Johnson tried to push ahead with a packed agenda. Republicans narrowly ultimately passed a budget blueprint that would allow the party to fund ICE and Border Patrol for the next 3 years. It's a very key step in the party's plan to reopen the Department of Homeland Security. But it took more than 5 hours to get enough Republicans on board. They just held the vote open. The House also passed a controversial surveillance bill along party lines, despite some conservatives voicing concern about privacy issues. That's that FISA bill, the Foreign Surveillance Bill. And then a vote on a farm bill was delayed after some members of the caucus fought over the inclusion of pesticide provisions. here's the reality of the House Republican conference, and you know this. When you have majorities that are as slim as Johnson's, every member's concern gets a say, and it leads to members like Chip Roy, for example, yesterday at one point storming out of the Speaker's office screaming about, we had a deal, you went back on it. Can you just unpack from a broad level the dysfunction, frankly, that we saw out of the Republican conference in the House yesterday?
Yeah, like you said, I think yesterday was one of the more wild days that we've seen this Congress. We had 2 votes that both spanned multiple hours. These are supposed to be 5-minute votes, as you know.
Yeah.
The floor was left open, and we saw leadership working with holdouts, trying to negotiate, get agreements. And the issue is that Johnson was trying to jam 3 highly controversial measures into really votes in one day. And that didn't really work out for them in the end, because as they were trying to give concessions to certain groups of the conference, that ended up angering other factions. Prime example of this, Johnson agreed to delay consideration of the Farm Bill and delay consideration of this E15 bill. That's a huge priority for Midwesterners to get conservatives on board to vote for the rule. Then once that agreement happened, the Midwesterners got really upset with Johnson, and they decided to withhold their votes for the DHS budget blueprint, which caused that 5-hour vote that we saw. Ultimately, Johnson agreed to give them this standalone vote on E15 later, but it really was a day we saw Johnson and leadership just unable to get this across the finish line for several hours, and it's a tactic that we've seen from them before, and it's a tactic that we've seen from these members as well. They constantly use leadership, take them hostage a little bit, and try and get concessions, whether it's related or unrelated to the bill.
I mean, they very much are taking them hostage, because the concern when you go to the floor and you're not really sure where the votes are going to fall. I mean, Pelosi would have never done this as Speaker. When you have that, anyone can make whatever move they want. And it's also why you'll hear people like me on our air say, well, no vote is done until the gavel falls, because they can hold them open and try to haggle people one way or another. But I think the bigger question is, what does this portend for Speaker Johnson, who is trying to get another reconciliation bill done, who's trying to stop that from being just a Christmas tree of everyone's priorities? They're trying to keep it pretty targeted. And the fact that he now has to get through a midterm election year where his members are nervous about some of the votes that he's going to have them take potentially.
Right. I mean, it's not a great sign. Again, they were able to get everything across the finish line yesterday, though. It took a really long time, but they were able to do it. They're still not out of the woods. FISA today, that's going to come back up in the House, because the version that the House passed and sent to the Senate, they're not okay with that version. It has this unrelated crypto measure that senators just won't pass. So they're going to have to take up another short-term extension there, kick that can further down the road. And then we also have DHS funding and reconciliation, like you said. The Department of Homeland Security is still shut down. It's been 76 days now, and it's not exactly clear whether Johnson will move to bring that up today or if it's going to take several weeks. There's a lot of mistrust among House Republicans towards Senate Republicans that they'll get this ICE and CBP funding across the finish line and reconciliation. And they feel like they want to wait for that process to completely play out before funding the rest of the agency. But the employees are going to stop getting paychecks there likely next week. And the White House is urging House Republicans to take this up. And so far, we haven't seen a sign that they're going to do that yet.
We've also had now 2 opportunities of the Senate passing a mechanism that the House could approve. Again, remember, majorities for Republicans in both chambers, as we know. And House Republicans have said, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. So we'll see if they bulk at it a second time, especially as that second looming deadline of, OK, employees are going to start losing their paychecks again. We know how painful that was the first time. The ping pong ball just seems to go back and forth. I will say, I think I take the point, and the Speaker's office would likely echo it, that they ultimately got it over the finish line. But I think the optics of how messy it is just kind of continues to fuel this idea of a conference that has competing priorities. And it's not clear that with majorities as slim as this, everyone can get what they want. But everyone does have to stand on their own ballot line come re-election day in November. Those are going to be competing ideals going forward. Congressional reporter for Axios, Kate Santlace, keeps our job interesting. Thank you, as always.